Hey Young Titans, today we're going to start by going into Photoshop and I'm going to be working with a project that I already started with you. So I just opened up my project and you can see I had to change some of my textures because I forgot to save, and just like you, I make mistakes. So we should remember to basically every time we do something cool, take a second to press Command S, which will, you saw that little thing come up, it'll basically save your project. Or you could go to File, Save, and this is grayed out because I just Command S and it worked. So it won't let me save twice in a row unless I make a change. So now I can go to File, Save again. All right, so anyway, I know it's saved now. I'm going to continue moving forward. So one thing that you'll notice with my new textures is that I have this, which isn't really a texture, it's an animal that has a texture. So the first thing I'm going to do is use my eraser and change it up in the options area so that I have a low hardness. And I'm going to make the size a little bit bigger. And I'm going to erase everything I don't need from this picture because all I want this project to be about is textures. I don't want it to be about specific animals. So part of what I don't need is obviously this area that's over here that's empty. And another part of what I don't need, so I'm erasing that with a really large eraser. Another part of what I don't need is anything that determines what this thing is other than its texture. So I'm moving around and I'm getting rid of the eyes and the face because those are just going to be distractions to my viewer. I want my viewer to focus on the texture. Okay, so pretty much everything that's over here is going to be a distraction. If the viewer has something specific to look at, like eyes, they're going to notice this texture above every other texture, and they're not going to look at anything else. So you can't give them something that has that high degree of a focal point. All right, so now that I changed this texture, and you can see it has a very interesting shape, but I am noticing as I move it that there's some parts that I missed as I erased, so I'm trying to do a better job by going back and finding all those parts. So now I basically want to do that to each piece. So I think I showed that in the video how to get started. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. But before I do that, I realized that one of my videos has a blatant, what's called a watermark here. So I'm just going to delete that. The watermark, let me show it to you. The watermark or anything on a picture, like it might have little swirls or a logo here or something, or it might say something, that means it's owned by somebody who doesn't want to share it with you. So we're not going to use this picture because that'd be causing copyright infringement. All right, so back to what I was doing. I'm going to go use my eraser to get rid of anything that's not a texture. I'm also going to change the shapes of each object as I go. By the way, it really helps if I have my move tool selected and I click this auto select. This is going to be a major change. People who don't watch this part of the video or forget to do it are going to have way more work because every single time that you move something or you need to move something or you want to work on something else, you would have to come to the layers bar, find what you want to work on and click it, rather than just using auto select, which will allow you to grab as you wish. I just basically grab the top thing anytime I click something, which will allow me to quickly switch to my ruler and get through my work way faster. So I highly recommend that you click what you want to work with by having that auto select checked. Okay, so what you'll notice is that I did change the shapes of many of my images. I pretty much took all the harsh edges away, except I kept these here to show you, but I pretty much erased all the harsh edges. And you can see I also brought in a few more pieces because I felt like I'm probably not going to have enough to fill everything that I want to fill so far. So you can also see that they're overlapping, which is not a big deal. You could have them spaced out if you want, if that helps you, but it's unnecessary because ultimately they're all going to come out together. I also purposely brought this one in because you can see that there's a swirl there. It also has a word right here, but that swirl is one of the company's logos, which means that somebody owns it. So again, I'm going to delete it from my project. All right. Now I'm going to go in and start putting things the way I want them. Basically making the composition interesting and trying to have some movement in it and to have some variety. You can see that I left this thing a rectangle on purpose, but everything else is not a rectangle. You can also see that I left these harsh edges, but in this case it's not going to matter because I am having that go off the page. So I'm then going to start bringing in each of my textures to overlap the other texture, and you can see that because of the soft eraser, it looks like things are blending into each other, which is exactly the effect I wanted. So I want this lion fur to be above whatever this green molecule-like stuff is. So I'm going to come over here to my layer area, and you can see that I do have my auto select on my move tool, so I can grab whatever I want to work with. And not only do I grab it, but it goes exactly to the layer that that object is on. So I want this layer, I'm going to move this up a little bit, to go above my green slimy thing. So I'm just going to go and do that. So now you can see that I moved it above here, and now it's above. So if I want something to change in the order that I have it in, as far as the layers are concerned, it's an easy fix. Another thing I wanted to show you that's an easy fix is when you do have one or two rectangular pieces, you could Command T them to turn them on a diagonal, and that way you'll be able to, what's the word I'm looking for, make it so that it doesn't look like a tile to everything else. So I have this kind of squared off, and that's a pretty big piece, so I'm probably going to overlap it with other things like my cow. So again, I'm going to just move my cow above my sponge, and there you go. Okay, so it's only fair to mention that I did add a few more textures. I found that 12 wasn't enough in this case. You'll also see that I specifically got textures with interesting shapes like this rope that I'm moving right here. I do have some things here that are interesting shapes that create movement. For example, my rope. If I picked anything long and twisted or long and curly like that, like maybe woman's wavy hair or a piece of bacon, something like that is a great thing to have a viewer's eye brought through the piece. I also have this like lava, which creates movement here. So you can see that I'm trying to create, also these lines create movement in my piece by having them all go in the same direction. This seems to be the focal point. Everything seems to be pointing to that, but it's not so obvious that it's annoying to the viewer. So that's a great way to have a good composition. Composition is something really hard to teach, but one thing I could tell you is variation in size and shape definitely helps composition. Overlapping helps composition. Having things go off the page helps composition. Having your object not directly in the center improves composition, or your focal point, I should say. An area of emphasis or an area that stands out. And having things that are almost like arrows pointing to different areas are a great thing to have in your piece. All right, so you can see that you can't see any of my background. If I had a white area like that, that would be a negative. I'd want to keep everything filled so I have nothing but textures in my piece. And I don't have any of those harsh lines that you were able to see like this one left visible. Once I've accomplished all those things, the last thing I want to do is add my name to it. So I'm going to make sure that I'm on a high layer because I want to be able to see my name when I put it on. And I'm going to use my text tool. Once I click and release, I'm not dragging a box or anything, just click and release. I can change the size of my text up here. I'm going to make it about 36 because I don't want it to be so large that it's bigger than that it stands out in the piece. And I'm going to pick a text that looks cool. I never want to stick with the standard Myriad Pro because it's boring and it's default. I want everything in my piece to be original and not be like my neighbors, including something as seemingly unimportant as my name. So I found the text that I like. You guys might not have this text available. I put it in specially, and there's a video on that later if you want to learn how. I'm going to put my name the way I want you guys to, which is your first name, your last initial, and your grade. I'm going to put myself in grade 9. Notice it's not in the center of the piece because it's not what the piece is about. It's something that's just there in case someone says, oh, I really like this. I wonder who did it. They'll have some place to look, but it's not, my piece is not about that. So it's not going to be big and it's not going to be in your face. All right, so that's how you finish TC1, Texture Collage 1. So the first thing I'm going to do is save. And the second thing I'm going to do is start TC2, which is way shorter and easier. We're going to save, go to Save As, and after we've already saved it normally, we're going to save as TC2. And you're going to keep everything else the same. When you press save, it's basically, and you press OK there, you're basically creating a second document, everything of which is already the way you made it, except that we're going to go into it and make some changes now. The first change we're going to make is Command U, and you guys are really going to like this. I'm going to work with my lava first because I think it's going to make the biggest impact on you as viewers. So I'm going to press Command U, which opens up the ability to change the color of things. So we're going to change our hue to whatever color we want. Wow, that gold looked really cool, molten gold it looks like. We can make our saturation down if we find out that things look a little bit too bright to look realistic. What we want to do here is we want to change the color to something that looks cool, but we also don't want to stop the viewer from being able to see the texture. So some of these are just too bright. We're losing the texture. I might turn down my saturation a little bit. But that looks pretty neat. I also like that gold, and that purple is exactly what I want. That's what I'm going to keep. Press OK when you're done colorizing. You can go over here. I'm going to do this one too in front of you. So I'm going to change this to maybe a reddish color like that. I'm happy with that. Press OK. Now the other thing I wanted to show you is what if you pick something that doesn't already have color? Because these things were very bright, so they were easy to change. When we choose something with very little color, like it's black and white or gray maybe, it's going to be a little bit different. We're still going to press Command U. You can click the colorize button on, which will help a little bit, and you can also move the saturation up. But as you can see, it works way better with the other things, the things that already had bright colors, because it only has, you know, what it came with to work with. So you are going to be able to change the colors of these things, but not as dramatically. All right, so maybe I'll take one more. You don't have to change the color of everything, but you should change almost everything because you want to make this look nothing like the other project. So you want it to look as different as possible. I'm doing a lot of changing things to like a purple color on purpose because it's creating kind of a color scheme that I want to work in. Okay, so here's my TC2 with all my color changes. Next thing I want to do, and this is the last thing by the way, is pick a couple things that look like maybe they're higher than everything else, like this, and maybe even this rope. But 2 or 3 things randomly around my project that I want to make a little bit more of a focal point. So I'm going to start with this ice because that was my original focal point. A lot of things are leading to it. I'm going to double click right here on the layers area. You might remember using this layer style before when we did the zoo signs. You might have worked with a stroke. Here, a drop shadow is a little bit more appropriate. So I'm going to click and check drop shadow and then click the word to open up the things that I can change about it. Now the first thing I could change is the angle of the sun. Another thing that I could change is the distance of how far the object is hovering above the rest of the piece. And another thing that I could change is the size of it. Ironically, this says size, but you can see when I change it, it spreads out more. And when I change the spread, you can see that it gets bigger. So I feel like those are mislabeled, just so you know. But you could change all these things. So you just work with it until you're happy with it, and then press OK. Now you can see that this has created depth in my piece. It looks like this thing is hovering above everything else. So I might do that to 1 to 3 places of my piece, but not everything, because the point of this is to emphasize some things over others. So you wouldn't want to do it to every single area because that would not make things stand out. That would make everything equal again. All right, that's a pretty cool drop shadow. Let me change it up. I don't want to change the spread there. I didn't like that at all. There you go. I'll change the size a little bit. Press OK. And then maybe I'll pick one more thing like this thing on the other side of the page to try this with. You can see this is a pretty quick fix. Now one thing I should mention while you're changing these things is you might have noticed that I only changed the angle of the sun on one of them. That's because if I change it again, it affects all the rest because there can be only one sun. Now here's another thing that I noticed. When I open this up, and I'm going to press OK here, I have some shadows where I don't have an object. If I go to my eraser tool, I can erase that shadow. What's really happening is I'm erasing the object that was somehow left behind. I guess I wasn't as good at craftsmanship as I thought I was when I worked on this one piece here. And you can see that it left some things that's blocking the light and causing that shadow. So there you go. Now I'm going to call this one finished. So I've now shown you how to change your colors, and I purposely picked an all purple color scheme. You don't have to pick all the same, but you can. It does help highlight the fact that you're talking about textures and not colors. And also I've added drop shadows to certain areas to make those areas stand out even more. All right, so as a super quick thing, I just wanted to point out that this was TC2 and this is TC1. So you can see how much just changing those couple things changed the entire way you look at the piece. So that's why you should have 2 separate ones. But as you saw, TC2 only takes a couple minutes to do. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to leave appropriate comments.